Perfect. Greetings and salutations. How's everything, Sandy?
Everything's good. I'm
Awesome.
super excited for this collaboration.
Yes, yes, yes. It's been a long time coming. Mm.
I know, right? All right, cool. So, well, first and foremost, my name is Sandra Fayé on YT. And today we're going to be talking about these mandated vaccinations, which is a real heavy topic in
Mhm.
today's day and age, like with everything going on. It's an issue that is global.
Yeah.
So it's not just something that, people in the States are dealing with. I live all the way in China, so I'm dealing with the mandated vaccinations as well. So I think it's just a very interesting topic to kind of delve into and see exactly like how both of us feel on this topic. So
Absolutely. And hey, guys, I just want to introduce you to Sandy. I've known her for a while. She is a real, genuine, legit person, very intelligent, very inquisitive, very curious about the world. So, it's always good like chopping it up with her. Like she's got a lot of solid opinions on a lot of different topics. So without further ado, we're going to get into it. So, I'm in New York City, right? She's in China, which is, that's awesome. Like being in China. I know she probably gets stared at a lot, but she should be used to it by now. But yeah, I'm in New York City, and recently the mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, created a mandate where in order to enjoy certain indoor facilities, you have to be vaccinated. Like it's not even enough to just show a negative COVID test anymore. You have to have that vaccination card, basically like, sort of like that golden star that they had on during the Holocaust. I know that's a tricky comparison to make. A lot of people might think that's controversial, but it's very, very similar if you actually look at it objectively, right? So, in order to eat in restaurants, in order to go to the gym, in order to see Broadway plays, things like that, you have to show that card. It's not even enough to get a negative COVID test anymore. So, when I look at that, it reminds me of, having the power of options. When you have, options to cook at home, options to have your own at home entertainment, things like that will really, really help you out and really help you to preserve your body and preserve your freedom. Because what we're really looking at now is a war on the freedom of choice. It even gets to the point of mandated vaccines at certain workplaces, which I'm going to get into a little bit later on. But Sandra, Sandra, I just wanted to ask you, what you really think about, just the slow chipping away of people's rights, people's options, people's ability to choose. What do you think about what's really going on in this mass hysteria that we're experiencing right now?
well, if we're being honest,
Mhm.
a lot of these issues have been happening.
Yeah.
So, our rights being taken away, that's not new. This is something that, they've been conditioning us. We saw it happen with September 11th,
I'm going to get into it.
where, we started having like TSA, take off your shoes, random checks, like you can't just go fly like you used to prior to that date. And so the thing that we seem to notice is that when there's some kind of chaotic some kind of chaotic incident, it opens the door for people to allow the government to tell them more so like how they're gonna live their life, or what they're able to do, what they're not able to do. So this is just a continuation of what has already been happening. And with the whole mandated vaccines, um, my personal feelings on it is that I feel like it should be optional, like you have with the flu. You can get your flu shot in most places. If you have like a regular job, like whether you get the flu shot or not is irrelevant. Okay, that's not something that they force you to do unless you're in a specific field, which is understandable. In certain fields, like I would understand, like, hey, we want you to be vaccinated because of XYZ. Like, I get that. But as far as like regular schmegular jobs, I don't think that it should be something that you have to be vaccinated, or to go to the store, or like, just to live your life. Like, I don't feel like it should be one of those things where you have to get vaccinated, because it's not like the vaccine keeps you from spreading it. Okay, so it's more so, well, the way vaccines work is it builds your antibodies to be able to fight it if you get it. It doesn't keep you from spreading it. So I don't understand why we have to get vaccinated if it's not going to keep you from spreading it. So it just, the logic doesn't make sense. And you know, they're using this to further like test how much they can get us to do, how much we're willing to conform to what the government wants, and how much of our rights we're willing to give up for, you know, the sake of their chaos that has ensued, you know, which even people are going to say that, oh, that, you know, you're on this conspiracy tinfoil hat bullshit, but that's essentially what it is. That's what it's been. So that's how I feel about all this mandated, you know, vaccines and stuff. It's not going to keep you from spreading it. So it doesn't logically make sense to then tell people like, hey, well, you can't go here because you're not vaccinated, because it's not going to keep you from spreading it. Now, if it did, that would be a different case, but it doesn't.
Right. No, and listen, you touched on a lot of really good points there. You know, and I want to break them down one by one. So you said that this has been happening, right? And that's
Yeah.
absolutely 1000% true. You know, as much as I disagree with Thomas Jefferson, you know, being a blatant racist, right? He did have a very good point when he said, those who would sacrifice liberty for security deserve neither liberty nor security. So ever since last year, like, well, not, but when it comes to this, since last year, the weapon of fear has been used, right? Fear has been used to drive all types of, you know, doubts in people's heads, and all types of, you know, insecurities in people's minds about their health, right? So ever since last year, you've constantly been bombarded on the news with the terms COVID-19, Corona, et cetera, et cetera. You've been bombarded with all these terms to the point where people are coming up with their own terms like bear bug and stuff like that, right? Because now they're trying to censor people from using the actual term. And all of that is used to get people in such a state where they're so scared of death and so scared of illness that they're like, you know what? If it means having to give up my body to an experimental jab to possibly be safe, I will do that. Now, you touched on 9/11, right? Introduction of the Patriot Act after those towers were attacked, right? And you slowly started seeing our privacy get destroyed, right? Now they're x-raying our luggage, like you said, taking off our shoes. You know, now they're x-raying your body. So basically the TSA agents know what you look like naked, and they didn't even have to take you to dinner first. So now all our privacy is being invaded, phone calls being tapped, your internet, people know exactly what you're doing on the internet 24/7, no matter how private you think you've made your settings, right? And all of that slowly chipping away using fear, because they're driving into your head, oh, terrorism, 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 terrorism is right around the corner. So give us all your rights constantly. Let us keep taking and taking away from you for the most deadly words I've heard in the English language, for your own good. This is for your own good, right? This is for the greater good. We have to do this to keep you safe. We need more power, control, and involvement in your life in order for you to be safe. First, it was safe from terrorism. Now it's safe from a virus, right? Now it's safe from freedom of choice, because that's exactly what they're chipping away at now. You look at giant trillion-dollar market cap companies like Apple, Google, et cetera. They've mandated vaccines for their employees, right? So on the one hand, you have a lot of people saying, hey, learn to code, learn software engineering, learn this and that, right? So you can go work at these giant companies and have a great skill. Now you have this great skill and you're going to work at these great companies that a lot of people dream about. And now you still don't really have true freedom of choice, right? Now, I say all that to say this: as an employee, your freedom of choice is limited, but you should at least be able to have some control over your body, especially since Google and Apple are not health fields. You're not a nurse working with sick patients or the elderly or the immunocompromised, you know, which is understandable if they want to mandate vaccines in that regard, right? Like, even though some people might still have a problem with that too, but you're working in front of computers all day. You're working with apps and codes and things like that. What the hell do you need to be getting all jabbed up for, right? So, you know, all of this strongly reminds me of the book 1984, which has been going around a lot. I know a lot of people are probably buying that book like crazy. And another book that's a lot less talked about, which is Brave New World, right? So we're living in a weird, which is by Aldous Huxley. If anyone wants to check that out, feel free to do that, right? So we're living in a weird mashup of 1984 and Brave New World. With 1984, right, we're all familiar with that totalitarian government. Everyone literally had a camera in their home, which you could say those digital converter boxes are like a camera. We're talking to each other through a camera on our laptops right now, so we literally have cameras in our home watching us 24/7, just like in 1984. And the big thing too about that was the enemy that the party, that the state, that communist Britain was always facing was always changing. First would be the Eurasians, then it would be the East Asians, and then the East Asians would be our allies. Then the Eurasians would be the enemies again. And it was constantly changing, just like with the war on terror, which I'm going to connect back to the jab, how Osama bin Laden and the Mujahideen and the Taliban were our enemies were our friends at first against the Soviets, and then they became our public enemy number one, right, with the war on terror, which convinced a lot of people to already give up their rights and have their information stored in servers for perpetuity. Now you get back to the jab, right? That good old jab. And it's gotten to the point where I've seen people say, hey, my job mandated this jab, to the point where if I did not get it, I would get fired. Now, a lot of people are just like, so what? Just get the vaccine. But when you really think about it and break it down and see how dangerous that is, right? Get an income or have this experimental jab be put in your body that we still don't know what the long-term effects of it are going to be. Now you got to think about it. You have people who have children, right? They have bills to pay, mortgages, rents. They got to feed their kids, pay light bills, et cetera, et cetera. They're thinking either I get this jab or end up potentially becoming homeless. And then you want to have people turn around and say, this is a free country and we live in a democracy, where you got to choose between getting something that you don't know much about. Even if they tell you everything that's in it, you don't know what those effects are going to be, right? And it just gotten to the point where, it transitions into that Brave New World phase, because with Brave New World, people were encouraged to be ignorant. People were encouraged to just have sex, have fun, party all the time, things like that. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. Hey, if you want to have sex, enjoy entertainment, be able to eat all the junk food you want in all these restaurants, just get the jab and you'll be fine. Now that jab.
Oh, vax that thing up.
Yeah, exactly, right? That jab can be replaced
with that thing up.
Exactly. And people weren't even insulted by that. That's some of the most insulting language ever, because that's basically saying people are children, right? We need this catchy song for you to enjoy it, for you to be able to understand what we're trying to tell you. But in Brave New World, they had a drug called Soma, which they used to keep people pacified, right? Which is very similar to weed, and why weed is being so pushed heavily by governments nowadays. But I'm not going to get into that too much right now. But it all just goes to the fact that slowly but surely, every single inch of your life and your body is being controlled. And they are just doing it in such a slick way where they're like, yeah, we're mandating it, but we're also putting peer pressure on you to get it. And I know I've been going on and on and on, but it's just a topic I'm very passionate about, Sandra. So excuse me, Sandy. So what I want you to do is just give me your thoughts on, how this reminds you of 1984, or just how this reminds you of a very weird sort of dystopian time that we're living in now.
Well, in my honest opinion, like I said, like this isn't new, and we've been headed towards this. We've been on this trajectory for a while now. I mean, even if you're, you brought up like the concept of like society going more into like degeneracy. I mean, we see that with, thought culture and all of these different things, drug culture as well. All of these different things are combining with, more government control to give us the illusion as if we do have some kind of freedom, because people are associating like their freedom to do whatever drug they want, their freedom to have whatever kind of crazy sex that they want, or be in public as naked as they want or whatever as their form of freedom. But then real freedoms are being taken away. So
Right.
it's just like they prop up this idea of freedom, the sexual liberation, the drug liberation, while they take away the freedom of more important choices, like what you put in your body, or things that have to do with like financial things, or just like this privacy, the things that actually do matter. They're stripping those things away and then propping up these other things to keep us occupied, or to keep us it's like a trick bag.
Yeah.
Okay, it's essentially a trick bag.
Mm-hmm.
Here's freedom, but they're really taking the real freedom away. So it's
Sticking the
just
carrot.
that's how I really see it. Yeah. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's really see it.
Yeah.
And I'm fully vaccinated. Okay. I had that same situation, but it was a little scarier because I'm in a foreign country.
Right.
So it's like I wouldn't have been able to even leave to come home
What's the
because I
reason
wouldn't
you
have
had
been
to?
allowed at the airport.
What's the reason you had to
So
do it?
so essentially, in the province that I live, they passed ordinances that if you want to go to the hospital, if you want to use public transportation, if you want to go to the airport, excuse me, if you want to go, even with my job, because I work at a kindergarten, if I wanted to keep my job at the kindergarten, do basic shit, I would
Yeah.
have to get vaccinated. And unlike the US, I don't get to choose
Yeah.
which vaccine I got.
Yeah.
I went to the hospital and they put whatever they put into my arm, and I didn't have really a choice in the situation based on where I live. I will say this: I didn't have any adverse reactions
Okay.
besides like my arm was a little bit sore the first time because it was a double shot.
Right.
My arm was a little bit sore the first time, and I was scared. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna pretend like I was just not fearful.
Right.
um I was scared. The first shot, the second shot didn't hurt as bad, but I didn't have any adverse reactions yet or now. Like, like we said, we don't know what the long-term effects are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, like my dad, he felt a little bit better about me getting the vaccine here simply because of where China's headed.
Right.
They're headed to be like the next superpower. So why would they? And they're trying to encourage their people to have more children because the older population is dying off, and they want to make sure they have a still a large population of people. And they've been
Right.
preparing for this because there's many they're building hella apartments and stuff here, so they're
Yes.
preparing to
I
have
see
more
that.
people. And so my father, he felt more comfortable with me getting the Chinese vaccine because they're not, the likelihood of them trying to do something crazy to their people as far as like injecting them with some wild shit would be very low. And I
Yeah.
got the same vaccine that the citizens got, because I went to
Okay.
the same hospital. I was going in there the same way that their citizens were going in. They were pulling the vaccines out from the same spot.
Okay.
So
That's what I was gonna
there was a
ask.
little bit, yeah, there
Like, were
was
they
a
pulling
little
out from a
bit
different spot
more.
for the
No,
foreigners?
no, it was the same spot, and they leave the door open so you can see. You can see
Mm.
when the person's getting the shot. You're
Okay.
looking right at them. They don't have like the closed off office and all this stuff. Like it was more so like you're standing and waiting in line at the door of the room. You can see the other person getting shot, getting the
Wow.
jab.
Mm.
So it's like it I still have some fears about it. I'm not gonna pretend like I don't, but I have a little bit less fear knowing like the trajectory of where China's going and how they feel about their citizens, and then the fact that they're trying to in people to um have more kids and all this stuff. So I'm a little bit more uh comforted with the fact that I had to get vaccinated at least it was here. But, you know, it's crazy because I still had to do that because of these mandates. I didn't have a choice,
Right.
which sucks, you know? And I know that when I move back to the States, I still won't have that choice,
Mhm.
you know, unless like, it's just, the whole thing is just real sad. It's just really sad. And it seems as though like what can you do? You know, what can you really do if it comes to being able to feed yourself,
Yeah.
or like it's crazy. It's just crazy.
Exactly. No, so I want to ask you this: living in China, right? You're kind of in the epicenter of where this whole thing started, um, even though not the exact city, but the same country. On the media over there, do you watch the media, the Chinese media much?
Uh, to be honest, not really.
Okay,
To
but
be
like, have
honest,
you?
not really.
Okay.
Because well, my status as a foreigner, I personally try not to get too involved in their
Mhm.
politics,
Right.
because I'm not trying to get
Get
involved in their
kicked out.
politics. I get annoyed when foreigners try to tell Black people that we shouldn't get reparations or
Right.
stupid
Right.
shit like
Right.
that. So me personally, like, whatever's going on with their government, as long as it's not something that has to do with foreigners,
Mhm.
I don't put myself into their business. You know, that's on them. That's for the citizens to deal with. If it's something that affects the foreigners, like, you know, with the vaccines being mandated, then yeah, I pay attention to that
Right.
because it affects me directly.
Right.
I don't get involved with their shit
Mhm.
because that's for them.
But I ask you to, no, and that's a fair point. But the reason I ask you that question is because I want to know, like, based on what you see in, dealing with WeChat or the media, the social media there, and in general, have you seen officials or politicians or anything saying anything about boosting your immunity naturally? Have you seen any talk about that whatsoever?
No, no,
Same
I
here.
haven't.
Same here. And that brings me to the next point I wanted to make. Everybody is so focused on getting this jab, this vax, whatever you want to call it, this shot, right? Which, we all know how it works. You touched on it briefly in the beginning, right? It's supposed to give you a weakened form of the virus so that you can build up antibodies. So when you do get exposed, you have more immunity, right? Number
Hmm.
one, this so-called vax, people are still getting sick from the virus. There's because one of the big lies that they like to tell you is, oh, it'll make it less potent. It'll make the virus less potent. It won't affect you as much, because they couldn't really get away with the lie that saying that, oh, you won't get it if you get the vaccine, because that's what they've been telling us about other vaccines: MMR, polio, measles, mumps, rubella, which is the MMR vaccine, whooping cough, aka pertussis, all those vaccines that we're forced to get as kids in order to go to school, right? They say, oh, if you get those vaccines, you won't get the virus, right? And so many people are quick to
Right.
say, hey, the reason why these viruses don't exist now, polio and all that, our grandparents had them, but we know it's because people got vaccinated, right? But people are getting vaccinated against the bear bug, and they're still catching it. And not only are they catching it, but they're ending up in the hospital. So they couldn't tell the lie that, oh, you won't get it if you get vaxxed. Now they're saying, oh, if you do get vaxxed, it will reduce your chances of hospitalization, right? But you have nurses themselves, nurses who are on the front line saying, hey, a lot of people who are in here are vaxxed. A lot of people who are dying from the virus have been fully vaccinated, right? Now, I say all that to say this: over here on the media, and this is why I stopped watching mainstream media long ago, right? Because it's all propaganda at this point. It's not meant to inform, but they're constantly harping on getting the vax and saying nothing about building your immune system naturally, right? So they'll have like some segment on Good Morning America talking about, hey, we want to get these young children vaxxed too. We want to get them fully vaccinated, Moderna, blah, 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 right? But there's no talk about stocking up on vitamin C, loading up on vitamin A, right? Loading up on zinc, which zinc is extremely important because it slows the spread of viruses throughout your body. It almost stops them from replicating. So zinc is extremely important, right? Vitamin K, your B vitamins, every single vitamin you can stuff your body with, antioxidants, all that. There's zero mention of that. So you see a Good Morning America segment talking about get your vaxes, right? Get that vax up, right? And then right after that, you'll see a commercial for Domino's pizza. And you see the nice long cheese stretching from the pizza, right? And then after that, you see a Dunkin' Donuts commercial. America runs on Dunkin', boom. And somebody will eat that fried sugary garbage, right? So you have all these unhealthy people walking around with an acidic, inflammatory diet, constantly setting their body on fire. But hey, at least they got the vax. And that's one of the biggest problems with so-called modern medicine, is that it never goes to the roots of a problem. Let's say you have a disease tree. It never attacks the roots of that disease tree. It always goes for the branches, AKA the symptoms. So there's no talk about exercise, get fresh air, get plenty of vitamin D, pause, get all your vitamins, get all your nutrients and things like that, so that you can give your body a strong fighting chance to do what it's supposed to do, right? No, it's no talk of that. It's eat all the garbage and the junk food you want, sit on the couch, be lazy, oh, and get this vax to hopefully protect you. We are still looking at a
Yeah.
virus that has an over 99% survival rate, right? Yes, people do get hospitalized, and yes, unfortunately, people have died, but a lot of the times it has been due to obesity. A lot of the times it has been due to underlying chronic illnesses. And another thing that the media, of course, will never tell you is that the average American, and not just Americans, all over the world, a lot of people are overfed and undernourished. I'm gonna say that again.
Facts.
Mic drop, boof, right? Overfed and undernourished. So they're eating all these calories every day and hardly getting any nutrition from it. So your body is starving, it's dried out, you're not drinking enough water, you're not getting enough sleep, you're chasing the almighty dollar, you're stressed out chronically. And now on top of that, you're introducing this foreign substance into your body to try to fight something that it's never seen, right? And what people don't know is that 70% of your immune system is in your stomach, right? And it makes sense because the food we eat is covered in bacteria and stuff like that. Even if it's in a clean environment, there's this bacteria in the air, it's going to get on your food. You need to have a strong immune system in your stomach to help, fight all those pathogens from the outside world. Now, the best way to build natural immunity is through your stomach, not your arm. And I'm sorry I'm sure you're going to be fine, Sandra, but I'm sorry that you were in that choice, that you had to face that choice between livelihood and something experimental. You know what I mean? And too many people are facing this situation and not really thinking about how strange and just really totalitarian it is. Right. So the fact that you have this propaganda machine not telling people, hey, here's how you can really boost yourself for the long run, but instead they're just focusing on, here's a band-aid for underlying problems that you've been having from abusing your body for decades. Come on. Oh, and I wanted to ask you something too, because this is not just about me talking and talking and talking. I want to ask you something, Sandy. You're a vegan, correct?
Yes.
Since you went vegan, how often have you found that have gotten colds, flus, things like that? How have you felt?
Well, when I was stateside, I rarely got sick. Once I moved to China, I have gotten sick several times, but I mean that's kind of expected because it's new. You're coming in contact with new pathogens
That
and
makes
new
sense.
things that can kind of
That is true.
jack you up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I really don't get very, very sick very
Mhm,
often. And when I do get sick, it doesn't last long.
mhm.
So yeah, I mean that's been my experience being vegan. But I do wanna throw this out there that
Please,
just because something's vegan doesn't
does not mean
necessarily
it's
mean it's
healthy.
healthy. You have some people that are vegan technically, but they eat Impossible Burger every day. They eat, soy nuggets every day. Their
Yes.
diet is just as jacked up as people that eat meat and still eat like the fried foods and the
Yeah.
grease and all that stuff. So just because something's vegan does not mean it's necessarily healthy. But if you have a vegan diet that incorporates mostly raw vegetables, raw fruits,
Mhm.
some cooked items, because it's you want to be balanced
Right.
with everything that you do in life. Like you want to strive for balance. And so I try to make sure that my diet is balanced. And I recognize that when I don't eat balanced, that's usually when I do get sick.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
when I'm like, not wanting to get in the kitchen and I'm ordering out,
Mhm.
that's when I usually tend to get a little bit more sick. But when I'm cooking myself and I'm incorporating all the, like I said, raw vegetables, raw fruits, eating healthy, eating more balanced, I really don't get sick as often.
Right.
So that is a big point. And I'm glad that you brought up the fact that, a lot of the times when people are going to the hospital and they're having really bad complications, they have other issues going on.
Yes. Yes.
It's not necessarily, the people that are eating healthy, exercising, taking care of their bodies. They'll get sick, but they're not experiencing it as badly as someone who, is overweight or obese. A lot of times it's mostly people, you see them, they're obese.
Right.
They're not taking care of their body. They haven't been taking care of their body since never.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like, you can't make these generalizations like say, oh, well, not getting vaccinated is the problem, but disregard the other things that they have in common, with one another. So
Exactly. Exactly. And I like you, there's a point that you made there saying including some cooked foods among all the raw fruits and vegetables, right? Because just on a side note too, some vegetables are only effective in your body when you cook them. One of the biggest ones that I've spoken about before on my channel, and I do have the nutrition series, where people can check out different things, including how to boost your immune system naturally. I often talk about spinach and how it contains things called oxalates, right? Oxalates are also known as anti-nutrients because they block the absorption of nutrients and vitamins and minerals into your body. You can deactivate those oxalates by cooking the spinach lightly, cook it, put some heat to it, and now it's effective in your body. So I'm glad you brought that up. And that other part about the junk food vegans versus the natural vegans, that's a huge thing too, because French fries and Oreos are vegan, right?
technically, yeah.
French fries and Oreos are vegan. I had a coworker years ago, and she used to eat like vegan cookies every day. She would bring vegan cookies into work, and truth be told, this woman was like in her early 30s, and she could have passed for like 50, and she was vegan. And here's the thing: people see, even though I'm not vegan myself, I do recognize the health benefits of it if it's done properly. And people would look at someone like her and say, hey, the vegan diet is bullshit, because look at her, like this woman looks like she could be her own grandmother, right? But but the thing is, everything in moderation, everything has to be done properly, everything has to be researched. I'm gonna be honest. There might be some scientific evidence for the effectiveness of a lot of vaccines. We don't see certain diseases as commonly in the Western world as we used to, like polio, mumps, chickenpox, things like that. And there might be some evidence that vaccines have to do with it, but there's also evidence that increased sanitation has to do with it. Specifically polio, right? Polio was big back in the day because a lot of cities, especially in America, were filthy. And if you notice in a lot of third world countries where the sanitation system is not as developed, where there's a lot of garbage and things all over the place, there still tends to be high rates of polio and other old diseases that you used to see in the Western world. So cleanliness has a lot to do with it as well. All the medicine we need on earth grows out of the ground. And we've got, as a people, especially I keep saying the Western world, China has adopted a lot of Western principles too, but they still have a lot of their folk medicines and things like that. But in the Western
Yeah.
world, yeah, I'm sure Have
Yeah,
you
you
tried
go
any?
to the like their CVS type deals,
Yeah.
and they have tons of different teas. Like they do have the medicine, like the pills and stuff
Yeah,
like
of
that,
course.
but they also have a lot of like different herbs and
Yeah.
teas. And if
Hmm.
you go, and they have a lot of like um traditional Chinese medicine. Like in the hospitals, they have sectors that are dedicated to traditional Chinese medicine, with acupuncture type situations, or more massage therapy or cupping or different things like that.
Yes.
They do still encourage that as well.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, the funny thing is people will take these Frankenstein medicines and all these pills, these jabs, these shots, these potions, and experience side effects, right? And by, oh, that's normal. Yeah, my arm is supposed to fall off. The doctor could sew it right back up. Or my eye is supposed to like hang out. The doctor will just put it back in. You know, I'm supposed to have total scrotal implosion. That's a whole Boondocks. That's a whole Boondocks throwback. If people, shout out to all the people who watch Boondocks. But so they will take these things and experience the pain and discomfort that they cause and say, oh, that's cool. But tell them, hey, try eating this fruit every day for a week or for a month and see what happens. And they'll look at you like you're crazy. No, why would I do that when I can just take Theraflu? I can just take Benadryl. I myself have not taken any medicine, like any of those OTC medicines, in at least 11, 12 years. No Benadryl, no
That's
Tylenol,
good.
no Theraflu, no nothing like that. The few times I have gotten a cold or flu, which has been rare, I would OD. I would literally eat raw garlic, right? Now, don't do this if you plan to be around people, but I would eat the raw garlic. You know, I would load up on tangerines, grapefruits, oranges, things like that. And I would see that
Vitamin
thing,
C.
hey, there we go. And you have to stock up on it every day because it's water soluble. It every time you take a piss, to be frank, you lose that vitamin C. So you gotta replenish it every day, right? And that's the biggest issue. That is why there is so much chronic and infectious disease in the world today. Because again, people are overfed and undernourished in the so-called first world countries. In third world countries, the food quality is actually better. It's harder for them to get it, right? But
Mhm.
lack of proper nutrition, lack of exercise, lack of inadequate sleep. You should be getting like 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night. All these things contribute to a bevy and an environment of sickness, right? If people could just start treating their bodies like they only have one body, they'll say YOLO and do something crazy, but they won't say, you know, I was trying to think of the acronym, but you only have one body. You know what I'm saying? They don't think about you only have one body. They don't think if you only have one body and treat that accordingly. You know, people will abuse their bodies for 10, 20, 30 years, right? For decades. And then when they get old and they get high blood pressure and arthritis and all these conditions, they're like, oh, that's just part of old age. No, that's a result of abuse. You start treating your body well today, you won't need to worry about jabs and potions and pills and all that stuff, right? I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a doctor, but I see the effects because I used to be a huge dairy consumer. I used to love having my
Mm.
milk with my cereal. I used to OD on yogurt, ice cream, pizza, cheesecake. I used to love that stuff. And I constantly had problems with mucus. I mean, excess mucus,
Mm.
constant phlegm. And I'm not going to get too graphic, but I was very uncomfortable most of the time, right? And as soon as I sat back and I said, what could be causing all this stuff that I'm going through? And I sat back, and once I cut dairy out of my product, out of my diet for like 99.9%, because I still have pizza and cheesecake like a few times a year. But once I cut it out every day, I felt so much better, so much less sluggish, so much more
Facts.
energy. How did you feel, Sandra, when you like went vegan and really changed your diet?
Um, I felt great.
Tell
I
us the
mean,
journey. Tell us the journey.
like even just having that discernment about what I eat,
Yeah.
that that was the trickle down effect. Because once I started having discernment about that, I started having discernment in other areas of my health. I don't drink alcohol anymore. It's pointless. There's other things that I stopped doing because it's not healthy for me.
Right.
So it's like having that discernment, it trickles down into other areas of your life. I did notice as a woman, and I don't want to get too graphic,
Give us the
but
fine the surface level details.
let's just say the lady parts they're at the correct pH most of the time. I mean, when you get your menstruation, your pH is gonna change
Change.
because of that. But in general, most of the time, my pH is straight. I don't have issues with taking my underwear off and seeing some craziness in the yeah. I
Yeah.
don't see that because I don't have that issue. And I really started like seeing that progress after going vegan. And I know that if I do eat something that has dairy in it, like on accident, like, you know, like sometimes like shit just happens, you know,
Right.
if you go out to eat, they put the wrong things in it, like it happens. I recognize when that happens almost immediately
Mm-hmm.
because certain, you know, like the pH gets thrown off
Right.
immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where like I recognize that having that bovine juice in my system was causing a lot of issues with that area downstairs. And those are issues you don't want to have. Okay. You might understand, you know, you got different parts. You don't want to have those issues. They're
No,
not
well, the
comfortable.
reason I agree with you, Sandy, the reason I agree with you is because I've been on the receiving end of those issues a couple times. There's been times when
Oh,
not to go not to go too into detail, but there's been times where, you know, I'm enjoying some naked wrestling with a chick, and you know, I'm getting a waft of something. So I'm doing my thing, and I'm getting a waft, and to the point where I gotta hold my head up like this. I've had to hold my breath, and yeah. So thankfully, that has not been occurring recently. I've been more selective with, you know, who I naked wrestle with, so I haven't been getting that issue at all recently. So thankfully for that. But yes, so I'm glad you said that, because recently, as a side note, I've seen chicks on social media talking about, girl, my pussy stank every day. And I'm like, why are you, that is not something to brag about. That is something to fix. That is something to
they
fix.
saying that?
See a coochie mechanic right away, because you are broken down there. It's not
They're
supposed to
saying
smell.
that? It
Yes,
stank every day?
they're bragging about this thing, right? And that all, and that's a beautiful
The only
segue.
time it should have any kind of smell is when you're on your period. Like that's the only time it should have some kind of smells, when you're on your period.
1,000%. And what does that go back to, Sandy? That goes all the way back to our segue of diets, right? Because what you eat is going to affect how you smell. It's going to affect your breath. It's going to affect your armpits, everything like that, right? And you know, in this whole weapon of fear that they've been using in the propaganda machine that they call the news, one thing that they like to show a lot is young, healthy people dying of the virus. I've seen that a few times. Like, oh, this guy was in the gym every day.
Yeah.
Look how buff he is. He was, you know, working out. But here's the thing. The most important thing you can do for your body is not exercise. It is the second most important thing. The most important thing, which we've been talking about for the past few minutes, is diet, because the fuel you put in is going to fuel your workouts. It's going to keep your body functioning when you're not in the gym, when you're sleeping, when you're at work, all of that, right? You're not in the gym for most of your life, right? You're in the gym for like what, 1-2 hours a day if you're a super athletic or super active person, right? So what you're putting in your body the rest of the day is what counts. I remember listening to this independent radio station years ago, and there was this dude talking about how he used to run marathons. He would run every day. You know, he was like a super athlete, right? He was a marathon man. And one day he got a heart attack. And he was like, what? He was like, what the hell? I'm active. I do my cardio. I'm in the gym. I'm doing all this stuff. And I got a heart attack. And the doctors told me I had a clogged arteries. This man had clogged arteries, and he was running every day. And he determined it was his diet, right? He was eating too much cholesterol and saturated fat laden foods, and not enough of the foods that keep his heart healthy, right? I'm gonna plug this in here. There's a website I found called Fruits and Roots, roots with a Z.com. I've told you about it too before, Sandy, and they have a lot of tropical fruits that they deliver, mainly in the United States and Britain. But for you, for international deliveries, because they don't deliver to China, there's fruithuntersco.com, right? So Fruit Hunter CO, I'm gonna send you the link after. They deliver internationally, so you should be able to get some
Nice.
things. But yeah, so I would definitely love to give you that. And you know, I want people to know about this, because we have to start putting our foot down, right? We have to start putting our foot down and saying, listen, we are adults. We deserve to have the right to have a choice. And you gave me another perspective, Sandy, because you didn't have a choice, right? I work a 9 to 5. Recently, my 9 to 5 said you can either show proof of vaccination or do a weekly or show a weekly negative COVID test every single week, which is what weekly
and you have
means,
to pay
right?
for it.
No, I get it for free, thankfully.
Oh,
Yeah.
you get it for
Yes,
free?
I
Oh,
get it for
that's
free.
lucky, because a lot of people have to pay for it.
Yes, yes. So what they're doing, that is what I call subtle peer pressure because they're trying to inconvenience you enough to the fact where you're just like, you know what, fuck it, yo, let me just get the vaccine so I don't have to keep doing this weekly test. Here's why it's
Yeah.
stupid. Here's why it's stupid, because it's been established. Doctors themselves will tell you that even if you are fully vaxxed, you can still catch it and spread it, right? So if you can catch it and spread it, shouldn't you also be sending a weekly negative test as well? Right? So you could potentially have somebody, just because they're fully vaxxed, they don't have to get a weekly test and they could come to the office and spread it to everybody.
The logic doesn't make sense.
And
It
there's
doesn't
so many
add up.
holes in this logic. I just want people to get the fear out the way and start thinking, right? Just start thinking. Everybody who questions things is not out to get you. Everyone who questions things, like you said before, is not wearing a tinfoil kufi and a conspiracy theorist. Sometimes we have critical and deductive reasoning for a reason, right? There's a reason we have these things. It's so that things are not just done to us against our will. It's so that we have the ability to question what is going on, so that we know, is this, so that we can make the most informed decision. Is this something I really want to go along with or not, right? We live in really the type of times we live in, and yes, this is not new, right? This has been going on for centuries, really, for thousands of years, since human inception, really. There's always been those in power dictating what those not in power should have and should do and should eat and should, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But nowadays, it's just so blatant because we have access to media and all this stuff, and we have the ability to critically think, some of us, that it's like, we need to get into the power of options. You understand what I'm saying, Sandy? The power of
Yes,
options.
we really do. And we like you said, we have to stop being so afraid.
Yeah.
People are fearful of the wrong things. Okay, they're fearful of the wrong things, and not trusting themselves a little bit more. Like, people aren't trusting themselves. They're putting too much trust in talking heads that have a financial interest in whatever it is that they're trying to lead you to do. So it's like people really need to trust themselves and have healthy skepticism. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being skeptical. Not everything is a conspiracy theory. Some things that were considered conspiracies, later on they published documents from the FBI or CIA that shows it wasn't a conspiracy, it was actually real. So it's one of those things where we can't just use these. They use those terms, conspiracy theorists, to shut you down the same way they use, like, oh, homophobic, fat phobic, all these different terms to kind of just shut you down immediately so people don't listen to you. Not everything is a conspiracy theory. Not everything is fear mongering. Sometimes it's just like people wanting you to think critically about the situation, like you said. And I would hope that people would come to a place where we can have these discussions without throwing these terms at each other, and actually listen to what people are saying and not just write them off because it's not what the general public is saying or what the government is saying.
1000%. We live in the year 2021. It's about to be 2022, right? And the amount of ignorance that exists compared to how easy it is to get knowledge is unprecedented. Like, we've never seen something like this in history. It used to be hard to get knowledge, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
First of all, in a lot of parts of history, most people couldn't read, so they couldn't get knowledge that way. They had to hear an elder say it. Now we have the whole entirety of human knowledge in the palm of our hand, and we don't use it. People share articles and they read the title of the article, and then they form an opinion and they move on, right? You have all this info so readily available to you, but you rely on somebody saying they know what they're saying, or saying they know what they're talking about because they have a white lab coat, or they're wearing a suit and a tie. Or because they got a JD or an MD or a PhD and they got doctor in front of their name. So they automatically know what they're talking about because they have a degree, because they're on TV, right? Where you really saw a huge change in the news was when was it Tom Brokaw? I think, no, it wasn't Tom Brokaw. It was Dan Rather, excuse me. When Dan Rather was reporting on the Vietnam War, roughly around 40, 50 years ago, and he was literally on the front line showing you what the soldiers were actually going through, right? The drug abuse that they were going through, the suffering, the mental illness that a lot of those soldiers in the Vietnam War were going through. These were still the days when the news was mostly meant to inform you, right? It was just objective. All it was telling you was what was going on in the world. It wasn't telling you how to think or what to think, just what it was. Once that happened, and a lot of college students were like, yo, fuck the war in Vietnam, we're not going. And you started seeing mass protests across college campuses across the US, the news started to change how it did things. And then America being the ultra capitalist society that it is, everything has to be tied to money, right? Everything has to be owned. So now you're getting to the point where over the decades, a handful of corporations own all or the majority of the news networks. And it became, we're not going to tell the people what's going on, right? We're not going to teach the people how to think. We're going to tell the people what to think, right? We're going to say this person is good, this person is bad, this country is good, this country is bad. But when it's convenient, we'll switch, and then we'll make that one the good one and that one the bad one, right? Just like in 1984, where their enemy was constantly switching, right? Allies became enemies, became allies again. That was constant. And that is exactly what we're seeing now, right? So now we have this propaganda machine that's being fed to us on a daily basis, right? People really need to understand how everything has been weaponized, from the water to the air to the food to the very so-called media that's supposed to inform you. Fear, I keep saying fear because it is such a powerful tool when you need to control a mass of people. If you can have a mass of people fearing a certain outcome, they will literally allow you to do anything you want to them. All right. Now, a lot of people were celebrating Donald Trump being silenced on Twitter last year. Right.
Yeah. That
Now,
was so stupid.
here's the thing.
That was stupid how people were celebrating
Yes,
that.
1000%, because whether you agree with him or not in his politics, or whether you think he's an idiot or incompetent or whatever, he still held the title of president of the United States. If they can censor and silence the president, what the hell do you think they can do to your regular ass? Your 9-to-5 wage worker ass with no power. What do you think they can do to you?
And even further,
Yes.
you know, that opens the door for cancel culture to invade other areas of your life.
Absolutely.
Like there was, I forget who it was, but there was someone that got their credit card company. It was I forget who it was, but their credit card company dropped them and said, well, you can't bank with us anymore because you bring negative media to our bank.
Wow.
I forget who it was.
Wow.
It was some prominent figure.
Yeah.
And you know, you hear the story, like his credit card company dropped him.
Right.
So it's like,
yeah.
Where does this end? Okay, it'll become a situation where, you know, you can't get loans because you are on Twitter saying XYZ. So now not only are you not on the social media, but now you can't bank with us.
Right.
You can't get that house loan because we don't agree with your politics, or, you know, just some crazy shit. And so people just don't realize like how, you know, they get so hung up on the emotion of, oh, well, I don't like him, orange man bad, that they don't see how this could affect you. You know, you might be on the end of that, you know, getting your shit taken down and your voice silenced because you don't go with what the main idea or media is. So it's just, people don't think. They get so wrapped up in emotion and they don't really think about how this logically is going to affect them.
1000%.
Crazy.
1000%. And that, you know, I call the words of one of my favorite rappers, Lupe Fiasco. Even though he's big into the vaccine, he's all for the vax. But one of my favorite lines from him is where he goes, I think that all the silence is worse than all the violence, right? Fear is such a weak emotion. That's why I despise it. And it's, he's like, we're scared of almost everything, afraid to even tell the truth. So scared of what you think of me, I'm scared of even telling you. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only person safe to tell it to. I'm locked inside a jail in me. I know that there's a cell in you. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, the man could spit, like, regardless of his politics, he could
Bars.
spit. Yeah. So, and
Bars.
listen, if that's words I never said, if people want to check it out, like, if people want to really like get a summary of what we're living in right now, that's it, right? It's 1984 again. I keep bringing this up because it's so applicable. There was something in 1984 called thought crimes. If you were thought to commit a thought crime, you would go to jail. They would torture you. They would try to brainwash you so you could fit in line with the party. What was a thought crime? A thought crime was just not even disagreeing with whatever the party that was in charge told you to think. Well, not even strongly disagreeing with it, just questioning it slightly, like, really, should we be doing things like this? Couldn't we? That's a thought crime. What are you seeing on YouTube? This video itself that we're making right now, right? We're saying a lot of things that would get censored. You know what I'm saying? So we're living in the age of thought crimes. If you say something that goes against the party norms, you're done. Look at a guy like Brother Islam. Islam has been going hard against these vaccines for the longest, because he's like, listen, here are the effects, and there are documented effects of people having brain hemorrhages, people having heart inflammation, people having all types of issues from getting these vaccines and going to the hospital because of the vaccine itself, not because they caught anything else, right? And they took his Instagram page down at least twice, right, to the point where he had to build it back up again. And this is what happens when you give the wrong people power. I'm just going to say it. A lot of Zuckerberg and what's her name, Susan Walsh, whatever the hell her last name is, who's in charge of YouTube. All these people were nerds when they were growing up. They were unpopular. People did not like them. And instead of saying, you know what, how can I be a likable, charismatic person? They're like, no, revenge. And they got these big platforms, and they're literally using these platforms to enact revenge and be the powerful person that they never could be when they were younger. Yes, I said it, Susan and Mark and whatever. What are you going to do? Like, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. I don't need YouTube to live.
Facts are facts.
Susan, though, don't Susan just sound like an automatic 911 call? Like, she just sound like she calls 911 off GP. Susan, jeez. Yeah, but like Sandy, listen, Sandy, it's like I said, people, just to take away from all this, work on your diet. Plenty of fruits, vegetables, herbs, seeds, spices, all of that stuff. I have a whole nutrition series on my channel, and I'm going to be building that more, where you can find things to boost your immune system, right? So really take that away and question everything, especially if it's coming from the government or the so-called lamestream media. Now, Sandy, I'll let you start us off, because I believe in ladies first sometimes. So I'll let you start off this episode. I'm gonna let you have the last word, in the words of Jason Black. But listen, if there's anything you want to plug, Sandy, anything you want to let the people know about, please feel free to have the floor.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to come on your channel.
Anytime.
This was a lot of fun. We had a really great conversation, and we're gonna film a video for my channel as well. So definitely check that out.
Everybody, check out Sandra Fayé on YouTube. That's Sandra Sandra Fayé on YT. My bad. I just I'm so proud of you. Listen, people, you got to know how proud I am of this woman. Like, she is like the sister I never had. I am so proud of this woman, and I'm gonna let you guys know a secret. She edited my third book, my entire third book. This woman sat up, and I gave her a deadline too, because I'm an asshole sometimes. I gave this woman a deadline, and she did an amazing, phenomenal job. Like, her attention to detail is crazy. You know what I'm saying? I know a lot of you guys in my audience, like a few of you might be single. Go to her channel, hit her up, annoy her, but be respectful about it, because this woman is worth your time. Believe me. My bad. Like, keep going, Sandra. My bad. I had to do it, Sandy.
You're so sweet. Oh my gosh.
But don't call me sweet though, because we know
it was a pleasure.
Sweet is not a compliment.
Not that kind of sweet. Stop playing.
But any type of sweet.
You know what I mean?
Because puppies are sweet, man. I'm a grown man.
Oh, you're a masculine man, okay? You Alpha, Sigma, Omega.
That's so sweet. Oh. What are you talking about? I'm an epsilon male. I'm an epsilon. I'm an epsilon male. Go ahead, Sandy.
It was a pleasure of mine to help edit your book, and I was very flattered that you asked me to do that. So that was a pleasure of mine all in of itself, and I'm glad that I was able to be of help. But yeah, check out my channel. I like to talk about plethora of things. I do story times. I talk about relationships. I also talk about my experience living in China
Yes.
and some cosplay. I mean, there's only a little bit of cosplay so far, but I'm working on some other cosplays that I want to, put out there. So, just come check out my channel, see how it is, see if you like it, suss it out. If you want to, you can leave a comment, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But like I said, we're going to film a video for my channel as well. So be on the lookout for that.
And excuse me, Sandra, just give me or give the people your YouTube channel one more time.
That is Sandra Fayé on YT. And my Instagram is the same name, Sandra Fayé on YT.
How do they spell Fayé?
Fayé.
There we go. And how do they spell Sandra? Listen, I want to make it as simple as possible for people.
Sandra.
How do they spell YT?
On. Y to the T.
There you go. Y to the tizzy, right? There we listen, Sandy, we got to do this more often in the future. Your head is on, right? Thank you for listening to me talk on and on and on. But like I said, I'm very passionate about this project, about this topic. You know what I mean? And of course, you always had intelligent, insightful things to say. So we will definitely be doing this again.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Thank you so much.
Anytime, Sandy. Anytime. All right. Peace.
Bye.
Go to bed. All right.
Oh my gosh.
Deuces.